trying to evaluate the legacy of Coltrane and why we haven't had figures of that stature since then. Why there's been sort of there's been a feeling generally that no jazz band has ever been able to quite get back to this feeling that bands like the Coltrane Band or the Miles Davis Band or many bands in the 60s and 70s had. I think this is, he points out that this is a big part of it. It's just the absence of a regular gig or steady work in a consistent environment. Because again, being on the road is very stressful for musicians. It takes an incredibly disciplined musician to travel to a different city, play a gig, go back to a hotel, wake up the next morning, travel again. You don't have time to practice. You don't have time to sort of live in any way beyond being a traveler and then doing this thing every night. And to keep growing and to keep improvising or keep developing in that context is very, very difficult. And so those bands that could play every night, they would rehearse during the day, or they would not, or they would just hang out, but they just had more time outside of the playing to develop what they were doing. And again, playing in the same place or the same environment every night enables a different kind of growth. And so I think what that taught me, or the lesson that I drew from that, is to not be afraid to really take time with material that I'm developing. If I can't perform as often as I'd like, or if I can't get my band out in front of an audience as often as I would like, I can still resist a little bit the temptation to put out another album or write new songs or keep creating new things, and try to stick with this more slow-moving process of developing material. And this is there are a lot of different ways to do this, but that's what I got to witness, was musicians developing their material somehow.
Yeah, it's really interesting to see, at least from my perspective, how the zeitgeist and the technological situation and innovations tend to shape completely the kind of music that we have at hand. And I'd like to know maybe what you think about what we could call a sleight of hand that happened when the jazz that you're describing was maybe more and more funneled to the universities, and it's still jazz, we call it jazz, but the way it started is very different, because before it was more like a try to copy and imitate and spend a lot of time on the same songs with like the same musicians in different contexts. And now it is maybe much more of an academic pursuit, not always, of course. But yeah, I would like to have your thoughts on this.
Yeah, I think that's right, what you said, that there've been all of the pressures that we can imagine come with institutionalizing something and trying to shape it for a curriculum and make it into something that can be sold to students. Of course, it changes the content and the process a lot. My teachers at the conservatory were people who had basically firsthand experience of the older generation in one way or another, and they were constantly sort of stressing to us that there, that there is no right way, and that to do these things, and that the jazz musicians themselves, Coltrane himself would have said, "I don't like this word jazz." Right? It's become an idea to keep musicians in a box, or market them, or push them in one direction or another, to try and make money by having an audience and a product that you can sell, that you can describe in a certain way. And jazz musicians never thought of what they were doing in that way. On the contrary, the earliest musicians were just playing the music that they knew, and creating new music as they went along, and they were making it all up. they were there was of course an idea of precedent and tradition that was already operating, but it was not written down in books. There was no real book. There was no, there was no technique books on which licks to practice. No, there were the people. It was a living tradition, and it's so important to remember that the people who invented bebop, a lot of them did not read music, or did not have this. It's not that they didn't have theory or didn't have a way of analyzing it, but it was more orally based than based on things being written out.
Yeah, it's really interesting because it feels like there is some kind of an optical illusion here. Earlier today, before the talk, we were talking about retrofuturism and how Star Wars today looks retrofuturistic, but back in the day, in 1979, when it first came out, it looked like the future. And in the same way, it seems to me like the bebop you're describing now seems to us to fit into a neat little category. But at the time, these guys were on the edge, and they probably were not feeling like they were creating something in a specific vein, but more that they were exploring a domain in all different possible directions.
The spirit of exploration is a really it's something that really needs to be distinguished from the idea of style or genre or brand or any of these other things, because I feel like that's a big. If you're forming a band now, there's a lot of sort of question of like, okay, well, what are we? There's a pressure right away somehow to you need to make a website or a Facebook page, or you need to create a video, or there's this sort of pressure to create a product.
Yeah.
Right away, and that this somehow then starts to fix a certain identity, and this is how we are all taught to think, to the extent that we ingest ideas about how to succeed as musicians. Related to this is the idea of professionalism, right? That there's a professional way to play an R&B bass line, and there's a professional. You can be a professional reggae guitar player, or a professional this or professional that, and it means that you know the rules and the stylistic ideas involved around playing a certain style of music. And again, it's not that you wouldn't have gotten thrown off the stage or have a cymbal thrown at you, as Charlie Parker did, I believe, for playing something wrong or that doesn't fit. But somehow the things were more because you were not operating on so many levels of representation, if we can say it that way, because you were not thinking about a photo for your cover and how you were going to present this on the internet and what the first record was going to be, because your first question was just to play music for people. And if it felt good, it felt good, and you got a gig. Of course, there were people back then sort of policing what was blues and what was rhythm, and there was the race issues about where you could play. It was not to say that it was easy, but there was. It seems that there was a little bit less pressure to define yourself quite so quickly or quite so early, and more of, like you said, more of just this. What was valued was also a sense, especially amongst musicians, this spirit of exploration was what was valued. And so that's why in the history of jazz, they always talk about the importance of the jam sessions, right? Because the musicians from the big bands, from Duke Ellington's band or from Count Basie's band, all these different famous big bands that were playing for the big dances, they were the dance bands of the time in New York or Boston or Philadelphia or wherever. They would finish playing their dance gigs for the dancers at 1 or 2 in the morning, and then they would go to the Hara, to the Milts or wherever. I can't think of the famous one in Harlem right now. And there they would just really play for one another. And there somehow the goal was to surprise one another, right? And the audience that was there was also an audience of regulars and musicians who were not going to be satisfied by professionalism. You know, they were
modern day professionalism.
They were there to be surprised, and I think you can hear that in those recordings. That when you can hear the audience and the other musicians when somebody is taking a risk or is somehow on the edge of what they can do, there's an energy and excitement in the room that that's different.